Hello everyone, and welcome to a Brocolite video. Today we're going to be doing a tier list, so that's going to be super exciting. I can't wait to spark controversies in the comment section of this video. For those who don't know, I did make a tier list about over a year ago, and in that tier list I had some opinions that have dramatically changed since then. Some opinions have obviously stayed the same. We'll get into that. But this time, since I have roughly 2,000 hours in the game, I'm going to be going more in depth about why I believe certain things and try to get on a more even level with you guys about this stuff. So, first of all, this is going to be a brutal Cybergrind tier list. This kind of can outstretch to violent and standard to some degree, though this is more specifically talking about brutal since that is the difficulty I have the most experience with. I have done some extensive testing with a lot of these weapons in the past few months. You guys might know that I've made some videos on the shotguns as of late. That's sort of like the consequence of my experimentation and my labbing in the sandbox. But anyway, let's just get right onto it. Starting off, I guess I will define the tier as I go along. First off, we have the niche tier. Unfortunately, the niche tier is reserved for only one weapon, and this time, it's not the screwdriver. But my choice won't really surprise anyone. This weapon is almost impossible to gain value from in any way that exceeds other weapons in the game. And I think all of you will agree with me when I slot the default piercer in here. Now, it's pretty obvious why it's down here. No significant tech. The only benefit from the slab version is that you get +1 headshot damage compared to the alternate piercer. It has no significant coin interactions. It does 9 damage instead of 6 on coins. Not very good. It has a 0.5 second charge time, which limits its draw speed significantly. Compared to the other revolvers, which have a very immediate value clutch, this one is extremely slow. I think we can just leave it at that. Next up is the linear tier. These weapons have dependencies on other weapons to gain value, and they are limited by their primary fire, and they are carried purely by their secondary fires, unlike most weapons in the game, which I feel are very versatile with their primary and secondary fires for the most part. The first one to go in here is the Slab Piercer. Yep, its younger brother is not much better. So it's 5 damage in 0.86 seconds. You know, that's adding on the 0.5 second charge time. And it is not a spectacular rate of damage. 5 damage for almost a second is really bad when you compare it to something like shotgun swapping, which is, you can get 2 quick P boosts in for 3.5 damage each. Or if you don't, you can just get in point blank range about 3 damage each. So that's already 6 in less than a second in basically the same amount of time. The only benefit it really has is the fact that it is 5 damage from a hit scan range, and it doesn't rely on headshots or limbs in order to get good damage. The 5-second cooldown is very negligible because you're not going to be swapping to this very frequently. It has a lot of really nice interactions with coins. Slab coining is very prominent in speedrunning, and it's okay in the Cybergrind. Really the only time you're going to be using this is like sort of when you're pre-wave 70 trying to find like a good wave starter. For a while when my PB was 91, my wave starter became just throwing 2 coins in the air and preparing a slab coin for 15 damage. And I would do that because it would offer a lot of hit slow whenever it would target its enemy, because it's like 7 or 8 hit scans hitting an enemy, so that would slow down the game a lot, allowing me to adjust to what's happening around me. And additionally, 15 damage is enough to one-shot a Radiant Virtue. So, hey, I had both those things going for me. It's not a bad starter at all. If you want to ease into a simpler way of starting the Cybergrind before you get into the complex stuff. And it's not bad at any level, really. Because landing a headshot with this will give you a lot of style, because 4 hit scans are hitting an enemy's head. You get a 4 times headshot multiplier, which is really good style if you're jumping and the weapon is at, 1.5x freshness. So hey, you got all those things going for you. At the same time though, it is still just a piercer, but with benefits. Now the next thing I'm going to be putting in here is going to be the Overheat Sawblade launcher, and some people might be a bit confused because this thing is pretty strong. It's 21 damage into saw, but that is kind of exactly the problem. It is just 21 damage into saw, and while you have a 0.3 second swap time to it to launch it, and you have to use it after firing it from the attractor, or maybe if you have a jumpstart cable attached firing from that too, that also works. But unfortunately, 21 damage doesn't scale very well. as you go up and up in the Cybergrind. There are a lot of weapons that scale very strongly, weapons with explosives, gasoline, saws with their pierce, stuff like that. It does have a dependency on magnets in order to get good value, because on the Cybergrind there are a lot of angles that it can bounce off of and fall off of. If you want to get it in a little nook, you have to first put yourself in that nook, and that's never a position you want to be in. It does have the benefit of setting things on fire, and because it does physical and fire damage, it does do a lot of damage to insurrectionists, but it's still really hard to justify. I guess if you don't have a conduction heavy build, it's nice to just throw this out once every 8 seconds, but at the same time, you know, you really don't want to be focusing on limited crowd control aspects when you have options that I'm going to be featuring later on in this tier list. I would say, so to summarize, I would say this weapon is just the weakest damage engine in the game, and by damage engine I mean that it's something that gets you damage over time even while you're not swapped onto it necessarily. Moving on, we have the consistent tier, and I'd say these weapons can reliably give you the basics and a little bit more, so you know, like features that play into really large damaging scalable things that really help you in the Cybergrind. The first weapon we're placing here, which might surprise some people, is the Attractor Nailgun. The primary fire is 5.2 damage per second and 25 nails per second, which is always nice for conduction and focusing enemy nail weaknesses, but the only real enemies that have specifically a silver nail weakness are fodder, so you can disqualify that immediately. 5.2 damage per second is not very good. Even the Slab Piercer has a faster DPS technically, because it's 5 damage in 0.86 seconds, but you know, whatever. 25 nails per second is just fine. There are a lot better options when it comes to nails. Well, I should say there's one best option when it comes to nails, and this thing doesn't really meet the mark at all. The one benefit it also has is that it's very accurate, so you can shoot it down range and all of the nails will land. But at the same time, you know, when are you really going to want to be using this weapon over other weapons? Because this is a focus fire weapon, and you don't want to be twiddling your thumbs wasting time on a focus fire weapon when there are ones that can do its job even better. But I'd say bottom of the line, it's nice to have all these features at once with, you know, focus fire damage, accurate, good nail output for conduction. It has magnets so you can focus fire more if you want, but it's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, I would say. Now the next weapon that's going on this tier is going to be the core eject shotgun. Yeah, I'm sorry guys, but this one is a bottom 5 weapon. It's the only time you're going to be using this weapon is either to P-boost sometimes maybe if it's your sole shotgun, or if you're going to be doing your once in a 16-second core nuke, you know what I mean? The only benefit this has over its alternate version is the fact that you can throw cores not only, you know, indefinitely, you can throw cores every time you swap to this, but you can throw cores, I guess, 0.05 seconds sooner than you would with the core eject jackhammer. And let me tell you, that's just not enough. This has kind of the short end of the stick for everything it's compared to. I don't think it's very good at all. The benefits, like, you know, core sniping is okay, I guess. 7 damage explosion in, what is it, roughly 0.8 seconds and some change, 0.81 if you're really tight with it. It's just not really good. There are a lot better alternatives to using explosions that are more damage, more radius, more everything, less expensive, and don't require as much precision. I don't know, it just kind of has the short end of literally everything. This weapon desperately needs a buff. The next tier, Remarkable Tier. These weapons don't always shine, but in certain scenarios they're the best thing you can draw upon, I would say. The first thing to go into this tier would be the default Sharpshooter. While it can be used to get several pass-throughs on certain parts of certain maps, it's extremely useful to destroy projectiles with, especially since you get multiple charges. Maurices, Mind Flares, Hideous Masses, beware. You can even use it on Swords Machine shotgun pellets, which is really nice. So if you have a lot of them firing volleys at you, you can, you know, just throw one of these in there and it'll almost always hit one of their shotgun pellets. The only real drawback to this one over its alternate is the fact that it does have a slightly slow windup. It's a 0.5 second swap time, which is a bit slow and doesn't exactly meet the mark for a lot of weapons in this game that are higher than this. But you can never say no to a 7 damage explosion from across the map that requires little to no setup and just a mere reaction time against an enemy. And the higher you go in the Cybergrind, the more projectiles there's going to be on the map, so the easier it's going to be to land these. Next up in this tier is going to be the Slab Sharpshooter, its younger brother. Due to its faster spin time, you can more reliably get higher damage pass-throughs, which also enables Starcoin combos. due to the fact that it has a lot of hit slow built into it whenever it pierces through an enemy back and forth. This can be used to deal large amounts of damage to slow-moving targets very quickly, especially useful on Guttermen to make use of their on-death explosion, and burning insurrectionists to utilize their burning damage multiplier. When needed, you can also destroy projectiles every 8 seconds or so with it, with a 0.36 second swap time, so really convenient, really nice, just lacks charges, and it's really only the best thing to do in certain scenarios, but that's better than a lot of the other weapons before this can say. Now, I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this, but if you've caught any of my streams recently, you'd notice that I do this little thing called Malicious Railcannon hate. And that's because I think this weapon is very overblown. I don't think it's that great compared to the other Railcannons. It's still in a remarkable tier. Sometimes it is the best thing you can do, but I think a lot of people do default to this weapon because it's really simple and easy to do, and it kinda sorta scales with the Cybergrind with the sheer number of enemies, but it doesn't scale the same way the other two Railcannons do in my opinion. However, like I said, it is sometimes the best thing you can pull out. And listen, one of the best features of it is the fact that it is kind of really instant. You can do it in half a second or so to get your easy 13.25 damage, and then the damage fall off of the explosion sort of tapers down to 8 and 4 damage, which kind of sets it down here because you only get the meat of the damage standing next to a clump of enemies, which is still good. It's a bit better than an overpump or something. It's faster and stronger, but at the same time, it kind of just does mediocre damage to everything else around it. But the true benefit from this really comes from being able to deflect projectiles. If you have a bunch of hideous masses, Maurices, mind flares swarming you like crazy, this is kind of the best thing you can have. Because it will deflect all those projectiles, mostly kill the Maurices, get those Mind Flare chasers off of you, and the hideous masses are going to have to fully reset to being able to damage you with their explosives as well. It gives you a lot of style thanks to friendly fire. It's just an overall really good Railcannon. However, on top of the fact that it does have a lot of really bad damage fall-off problems, the outer radius of the explosion doesn't set husks on fire, which is kind of annoying. And since it's an explosion, the value of it really tapers off when you start dealing with idols and virtues on the map, which are kind of like the strongest threats against you that aren't just straight meat walls that can follow you around like insurrectionists and mind flayers, for instance. And where stuff like conduction would shine by spraying nails while you're dealing with the idols, or something like the screwdriver might shine when you're being pelted by virtue beams and all you need is style upkeep. This doesn't really have a say in those situations, what I would call the most difficult situations to be put into. So that's the reason why it's down here. Finally, we have the SRS Cannon rocket launcher. This is probably a bit surprising for you guys to see so high up, I think. I think a lot of you guys would think it deserves to be a bit lower. But I do have to say, while it is a very simple weapon, its power cannot be understated. Its secondary fire has a 0-second draw time, allowing you to fire the cannonball the moment it's drawn, so there's really no downtime in using it, and you can use it in between combos very seamlessly. It's basically 12 damage in less than 0.1 seconds, and that damage amplifies if you're dealing with a burning insurrectionist. It can also be used to stun those insurrectionists, which is incredibly strong if you intend to burn a quick conduction combo on him. And I would say the 8-second cooldown is mostly inconsequential, as its immediate presence is valuable enough. Its execution is simple, its damage is simple, you can use it between combos seamlessly. There really isn't much of a weakness when it comes to this weapon, and that's sort of what places it up here. Now, moving on to the efficient tier. These weapons have one or more features that not only make them unique from other weapons, but have strong outcomes tied to them. Starting off, I'm going to be putting the Pump Charge Shotgun in this tier. Pump Charge Shotgun is very useful for dealing with clump crowds and deflecting projectiles. It has no cooldown, so it can be used indefinitely. You can basically use it as your sole weapon if you so choose. The ability to P-boost on top of that is nice, but it loses the ability to perform some better shotgun tech due to its lack of raw melee damage. 10 damage is nothing to sneeze at, and it allows for easy virtue kills and radget kills with some extra work. So this weapon definitely deserves to be up here, but I'd say that sort of places it in the bottom of this tier. Next up is the Attractor Sawblade Launcher. Now, this weapon will easily carry you through like the first 20 waves or so of the Cybergrind, but you'll quickly learn that just like the Overheat Sawblade, it's not a very good damage engine the higher you go in the Cybergrind. But it can be incredibly useful at boosting your Jumpstart core's damage and speed, and that is the main kicker here. Since you're shooting saws at your Jumpstart target in certain builds, you can quickly proc your conduction early to get the sweet 10 damage tacked on with however many times the saw pierced the enemy, which, if you don't know, For every time a saw pierces an enemy with a jumpstart cord in them, they receive 0.5 extra damage on the explosion. So that scales very well with Insurrectionists, and it also enables you to get very quick conduction combos. It also enables you to put your jumpstart on cooldown a lot sooner. That way you can start the 5-second timer early and get its value sooner next time. It's also really nice that this comes with magnets. So you can create a saw trap for an enemy that's supposed to land there. Like if an Insurrectionist is in the air, you can get a jumpstart cord on him and immediately start pelting him with the saws and get an instant proc on him that deals about like 20 damage if he's on fire and deals a lot more damage to everyone around him. And the nice thing about Conduction especially is that its damage scales very appropriately in high level Cybergrind because of how many enemies can be affected by it, and how setups can increase the damage a lot higher than, I would say, a core nuke. Especially since Conduction doesn't really have a damage fall off point, it's just kind of a static explosion. One final thing, when you're dealing with a lot of enemies clumping up on top of each other, it can be really nice to have this weapon in particular because it pierces 3 times, so you can use it to pierce through a couple enemies to get to your jumpstart target if they happen to be in the way of it, which will inevitably get you the jumpstart proc even with the worst case scenarios. Next up is going to be the sawed-on Jackhammer. Now I think a lot of you were expecting this to be way higher and close to irreplaceable, but I do have to say this weapon still does have weaknesses. For seemingly how good it is. It has extremely high single target damage while tossing out a very strong engine. Chainsaw rebounds are pretty strong, with the sawed-on Jackhammer getting an extra 4.5 damage out is really nice when you're trying to bound it upon approaching the enemy. But the 4.5 damage coming back is never guaranteed, especially if you're backblasting with the Jackhammer, so sort of just expect 9 damage maximum when it comes to using rebounds. Another nice thing about this weapon is that hitting a red gauge with this, a red gauge puts the weapon on cooldown for about 7 seconds, and the chainsaw has a specifically weird cooldown system where if it's immediately detached, your cooldown for the chainsaw is just 4 seconds. But for as long as that chainsaw is out, the cooldown is doubled until the chainsaw either returns to you or is detached, whereby it will return to its normal cooldown speed. So let's say I have the chainsaw out for 2 seconds, the cooldown becomes 6 seconds, right? Meaning that if you bunt the chainsaw a couple times while using this weapon, after hitting a red gauge, both of your cooldowns will simultaneously overlap over one another and allow you to get a lot more value the next time you swap to it. So this is sort of your red gauge weapon, if you want to think of it that way. One more thing, RS hammer boosts are very strong because they allow you to get your next chainsaw sooner than later and use this hammer however you want. RS hammer boosts, by the way, are just rocket to saw hammer boosts where hitting a rocket with your hammer and then detaching the chainsaw with your Knuckeblaster sort of creates a nice wall of damage very seamlessly. But what I would say is just slightly more versatile is the sawed-on shotgun. And look, I'll just say it here since a lot of people were confused in my previous video. These weapons are equal. They are shoulder to shoulder. I'm not saying that shotguns are suddenly better than the Jackhammer. This weapon, the sawed-on shotgun, is very, very mechanically intensive. Melee P-boosts are mostly frame perfect, and double, triple, quadruple P-boosts are very tough to pull off, especially when a lot of explosions are hitting you and knocking your pellets away. But I would say that the sawed-on shotgun definitely utilizes the chainsaw's power a lot better. Instead of just going with 2 strong hits, it sort of uses the chainsaw to amplify the hits that it can do and amplify your safety. Not only when you P-boost with it, you're refunding your feedbacker, which enables you to get more parries, which is exactly what you want on the Cybergrind. You can exploit this with double, triple P-boost by punching once, getting the refund, and punching again at just the cost of 1 arm exhaustion instead of 2, which is extremely valuable. And I would say the one thing that's slept upon with the fact that you're dealing 2 P-boosts, to a lot of you guys that just sounds like 7 damage, and you know, with a feedbacker punch plus a yellow gauge, you can get 7 damage really easily. Well, the nice thing about P-boosts is the fact that they are explosions. And if you're hitting 2 enemies, let's say 2 swords machines, 2 guttermans shoulder to shoulder, 2 Cerberai, you're getting double value with those explosions. Each explosion's getting 7 damage, that's suddenly 14 damage. And now at the chainsaw, you get your 4.5 to 9 damage. And since you're not backblasting, you're making it really easy for the return of the chainsaw to do its 4.5 damage once again. And if you want to do some shotgun swapping for P-boost, you can bunt the chainsaw out again without wasting your feedbacker cooldown. It's just very, very convenient to use once you get used to the hard to achieve tech, and it's hard to forget how much power this weapon has once you use it correctly. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on the sawed-on shotgun. I really learned a lot with this weapon. Next up on this tier is the Jumpstart Sawblade launcher. Now, this is definitely one of the more hated alternates due to its older brother being exceedingly overpowered for the campaign setting. Indeed, it is inferior on its own. However, in the right build, it can stand right up there with its older brother. I've made a couple videos using this weapon, each of them using the Neuron Activator song from Cruelty Squad, and in sort of at least my bubble of community and outreaching a little bit, they've sort of dubbed this build that I use as the Neuron Activator build. Due to its really prolific ability to activate your jumpstart cord very, very quickly without killing the enemy, and instead using the 10 plus damage on the enemy for enormous shock. And that is ADA, which is the Attractor Sawblade launcher plus the Overheat Nailgun and the Jumpstart Sawblade launcher. Now, it is particularly strong in this build due to the fact that you may eventually run out of saws when you're constantly cycling out your Jumpstart cooldown. In the earliest parts of the wave, when you have nothing but Hideous Masses and Insurrectionist, you can get a lot of value because those things are going to spawn in first. And you can immediately start with using these specific saws so that you can preserve your Attractor Saw blades in the middle of the wave when you really need to focus on utilizing that pierce to sift through all of the enemies that are trying to block your conduction target. And it's also extremely strong in the later part of the wave when it's just, say Mind Flayers and an Insurrectionist and whatever, right? When it's just the meaty enemies that are really hard to kill left over, it's really nice to get that sweet conduction pop. So instead of playing behind against all of these hard enemies without any other enemies to leech style off of, you can get this sweet conduction combo going very quickly to get your style up another 3 tiers and give you full health, no hard damage, and make the rest of the fight pretty much a breeze as long as you can focus. More often than not, with this specific weapon, you're going to want to attach your cord to high health enemies so that you can get that 10 plus damage pop whenever you activate your conduction. And like I said, it's very good on burning Insurrectionists because you can get upwards of 20 damage on them. And, proccing conduction sooner allows the cooldown to be faster because the cooldown doesn't start until after the cord pops instead of while it's charging. So you get kind of the best of all worlds with this weapon. But obviously, it is still slightly worse because it isn't as versatile as the Jumpstart Nailgun. In a vacuum, this weapon is very strong during the campaign. You can kind of just beat like the first act and the prelude with this weapon alone, but we're not here to talk about the campaign. This weapon's broken there. The only reason this weapon loses some points is again because its nail output is just okay. Unfortunately, it doesn't gain a nail speed boost while the cord is out like the Jumpstart Sawblade launcher does, but instead after the cord is attached, which isn't a problem really ever, but it is something to consider because you can either have 12.5 nails per second or you can have 25 nails per second, and that's not really good nail output. If you're running the Overheat Nailgun, you're going to be using that for your nails anyway. This is kind of just used to narrowly finish off enemies that are low and not usually to use your saw blades to proc your conduction early, but to use it instead after the enemy has died to get the explosive procs, which isn't bad at all, and it's very nice. The only reason this weapon is above its younger brother is again because it just belongs in more builds than I would say just the Neuron Activator build, which is the one build that the Jumpstart Sawblade launcher is really good in. And now onto one of my favorite weapons that I've actually been enjoying a lot, and that I think I've convinced a good number of people in the community is really good for a reason that you initially wouldn't expect. The Screwdriver Railcannon. The once hyper-dissed Railcannon, and suddenly I think it's better than the Malicious Railcannon. It's a crazy flip, I know. In my last video, I put this in the bottom of the tier list, and that's because really, I think most of us didn't understand what made this weapon so good. Oh, it's nice to get healing, and the damage is okay, I guess, and it is prolonged over a period of time, it extends the healing range, but it's all that for a 16-second cooldown. What makes this weapon worth it is the fact that over the 7.5 seconds, you are gaining a shitload of style. And that style can be the difference between life and death, because style is the margin between where you can have a lot of hard damage or no hard damage at all. For those who don't know, when you reach ULTRAKILL style, your hard damage immediately goes to 0. and that means you can heal to full immediately. And with this weapon constantly giving you style, you become nearly immortal as long as you continue with your bread and butter combos with jackhammers, conduction, with explosions and all this other stuff. You're basically immortal. And better yet, because you can punch the screwdriver into other enemies, you can extend this from 7.5 seconds to up to 15 seconds in optimal scenarios. Now, usually you're going to be getting like, 12 or 13 seconds after you wait like 4 or 5 seconds or so, but that's still incredible value, because that means you have 4 seconds after that to wait for your next Railcannon, and by that point, you've already been immortal for 12 seconds, you know what I mean? And you can still punch it into another enemy after that. But waves like that usually go by a lot sooner, since you get to focus on dealing self-damage with your FUPs, or with your corn nukes and stuff like that, or making greedy plays by going into corners with mind flayers with this thing activated. And virtues are mostly negligible when this thing is activated too. This weapon is the key to getting to ultra kill style in a lot of scenarios. Now comparing this to the other two Railcannons, because you do have to make the choice of actively using this over the other two Railcannons are a very good instant style gain. But if you get hit just 2 times in a row after using the other two Railcannons, you're getting immediately knocked down to SS rank, and then you have to fight to climb back up. And that can be really annoying. And that's what makes this weapon so nice. It makes it so that you don't have to fight so hard to get up to ultra kill rank. It's really nice when you target this against a Mind Flayer because they're pinned when you target them, against Guttermen because you can shoot it through their shields, and while they're doing their dying animation, you can punch it out of them into other enemies. You can use it on Insurrectionists to make use of their burning modifier. And yeah, the only time this isn't the right weapon is when you're dealing with a lot of mid-rangey kind of enemies that walk on the floor of the Cybergrind that will deal a lot of friendly fire damage to each other. You want to use this on a target that's going to be out of the way. And that's sometimes the hardest part of using it. But every Railcannon has a challenge with using, to some degree, to their best effectiveness. Now this next and final pick for the efficient tier might be a bit surprising. It is the Knuckeblaster. Yes, I don't think the Knuckeblaster belongs in Irreplaceable Tier. It belongs just up here in the efficient tier. In its current state, it has nothing unique that separates itself from the capabilities of the Jackhammer, except for a few really nice bonuses. It currently gives you negative arm exhaustion, which hurts your feedbacker use on top of hurting this, because it used to be that your punch cooldowns weren't interlinked with one another, they were separate. So unfortunately, this does now nerf your feedbacker when you use it. It also comes out slowly, which is kind of annoying, like just a few frames behind. It also comes out slowly, which is kind of annoying, so like just a few frames behind, let's say the feedbacker would. So it makes it kind of difficult to do jackhammer combos like really snappy. It can also cause you to barely miss a lot of melee hits, because the input doesn't come out exactly when you press the button. Is it convenient to use the Knuckeblaster as a mini jackhammer in between your combos? Yes, it is still really good with its AoE, being able to deflect projectiles and deroute sentries, cause guard breaks for insane style and healing, pop idols with the AoE, and assist with kill confirms on certain enemies. But compared to the two arms and the scalability of each weapon in the tier above this, it just barely lacks the potential it needs. Speaking of the final tier, Irreplaceable. No other weapon can achieve the level of versatility and power that these weapons have. And starting off, we have the GOAT, the Overheat Nailgun. Among the most top players, it is almost unanimously agreed as the best nailgun in the game. 11.25 DPS, 62 nails per second with the right click, can set enemies on fire, has a widespread that's really good at tagging as many enemies as possible for conduction. It's the ultimate conduction weapon. It's the ultimate Maurice killer as well, next to the Jackhammer, of course. It's got 2 charges instead of 1, which is extremely nice because that means you can do 2 barrages. You can exploit its barrages by firing your Attractor in between your barrages, allowing it to refill instead of spending one of your heat sinks. And one thing that's really nice about it, after spending your first one, it immediately starts refilling in between your combos after using this weapon, which means that you can spend one, wait 4 seconds, spend the next, wait another 4 seconds, and then you'll already have another battery left in the weapon for a third one. So you essentially, if you're playing right, can have 3 charges instead of 2. The only weakness of this weapon is that it requires you to hold it out for as long as you gain value with it, but its value is so tremendous that it's justified in every scenario. Next up, we have the Slab Marksman. And yes, I'm gonna die on the hill that the Slab Marksman is better than all of these weapons below it. Many people may be upset that this weapon is here, but I will die on this hill. Coins are coins, right? You don't need me to say that. Coins are 1.5 damage conductive explosions. They're 10, 11, 12 damage pass-throughs with the electric railcannon. They're wave starters as slab coins. They're at least 5 damage in 0.35 seconds. Punching them in between combos is extremely inexpensive. They're chargebacks for insta-kills and ferryman conduction. There's no way I can call it bad, even if you hate the primary. Most people put it in their first slot, and having a 2.5 damage core rocket passing primary fire is really strong no matter which way you spin it. Now I'll talk about more of the difference between this alternate and its older brother in just a sec, because he's right next to him. Very obviously. Coins are coins, so these two will inevitably be next to each other. While this weapon is slightly better for raw damage, its damage scales improperly due to each hitscan's reliance on enemies to have heads. For those who don't know, coins during a split coin actually do 2 damage each, but the damage can be multiplied by 1.5 or 2 if the coin hits their limb or their head, and it will always try to hit their limb or their head when available. But certain enemies don't have heads, and some of them don't even have limbs. Enemies without heads are gutter tanks and insurrectionists and hideous masses, and enemies without heads or limbs are drones and virtues and Maurices. And while you're not always going to be trying to use your coins on these, it is inevitable that your coins will target these enemies, and that can be extremely annoying. One thing that does put it up slightly is that it can target 2 fodder enemies for insta-kills while they're charging up their projectiles, which can give you good style, cause 2 explosions. But at the same time, the Slab Marksman can also target enemies for insta-kills, and if it doesn't target an enemy it can insta-kill, each pass-through that it causes on that enemy will have an opportunity to do the insta-kill as each hit scan passes the enemy. So that also is a nice benefit for it. And if you are too much stuck on one, but you want to be able to use the effect of the other, you can always make your next weapon the opposite version of the one you're using. So for instance, if I have the alt marksman, I can have a default sharpshooter in my next weapon slot. And if I fire a coin, I can immediately swap to the default sharpshooter and shoot it for a split coin. And the same goes for the default marksman. If you want the 5 damage split coin, you can just swap to the alt sharpshooter and fire the coin with it. Next up is the electric railcannon. Here we are, finally, the best railcannon in my opinion. The ultimate railcannon, trading a long cooldown with incredibly versatile applications of damage. You have all the variations of rail coins, and you have instant conduction detonation at all times in your pocket. Its damage scales with however much you commit to your combos, say with nails and magnets and coins and rockets. And on top of that, it's just an infinitely piercing 8 damage weapon. In a lot of arenas, when you're kiting enemies, you can hit like 7, 8, 9 of them in a row with this, and that's upwards of 56 damage or more than that alone, right? Its damage doesn't fall off through distance like the Malicious Railcannon does, nor do the conductive explosions. Those don't fall off either like the Malicious Railcannon. And one of the really nice things about it is that you can use it in tandem with the Jumpstart to recursively proc your conduction explosions repeatedly into one another. So you can, for instance, pop your Jumpstart cooldown early in the wave, and then apply more nails, pop another conduction combo using the electric railcannon, and then after that combo, your Jumpstart will be back online, pop it on that next, and by that time you've caused 3 conductive explosions, which is a lot of style and a lot of damage. Easily an irreplaceable weapon. Next up, something just slightly better, is the Firestarter rocket launcher. This is easily the best damage engine in the game. It doesn't matter what you have to say. Each glob of gas can generate 2 DPS for 8 seconds. And unlike saws, it doesn't discriminate between how many enemies are situated in the gas. It damages them all equally with 0 fall off. This means all gas, each one that you set that's on fire, can gather up to 16 damage per glob. When playing ledgers or kiting enemies into place, you can get incredible amounts of stackable value this way. And the cost? Holding right click for maybe 2 seconds and pressing left click once. All that for a scalable 50, 100, 150 damage plus on higher and higher waves. Not only that, but when lathering an enemy in gas instead, you can spray the gas before firing in the quarter-second draw window. This enables all of your Firestarter rockets to deal 3.5 damage normally, and the 0.5 ticking flame damage over 2 to 5 seconds. This makes every Firestarter rocket deal effectively 6 damage instead of 3.5, which is incredibly valuable. And if you want, you can make one of those globs that you fire out during the draw time window hit the floor to deal an extra 1, 2, or 3 damage to that enemy that you're hitting for, say, 9 damage instead. This thing scales so well with every Cybergrind run. And since each gas glob is a projectile, you can fire it into the air and expect it to land down during the time that the wave has already started to give you another layer of fire as the initial wave of gas is already starting to dissipate. So you can get effectively 16 seconds of value or 32 damage per glob. It's insane. This weapon is easily irreplaceable. And somehow even better, I would say, is the Freezeframe rocket launcher. This weapon is one of the 2 best movement tools in the entire game, as well as one of the quickest, widest crowd control options out there. Due to the rocket launcher's quick swap time, you can ride your rockets extremely quickly, giving you unmatched aerial movement, and you can use this to reposition from sides of the Cybergrind. You can go underneath the Cybergrind, you can go up above, you can use your rockets in tandem with other combos like double hammer boosts, or you can use them with conduction, you can use them with flicker nukes and stuff like that. And that's not all. While this thing has amazing movement, it also has an incredible crowd control option called a FUP, which stands for Frozen Unfriendly Pulls. And FUPs enable you to produce a large 7 damage explosion in less than just 0.4 seconds, at the cost of 35 health maybe, due to the fact that rockets have larger explosion radii when they are frozen. It is truly the inarguable slot 1 rocket launcher variant. And you can do this once every second if you want. It is incredibly inexpensive. The only thing you're spending is your health. Next up, even better, is the Core Eject Jackhammer. This thing, I'm serious, this thing needs a nerf. This thing is genuinely too strong. I would say nerf the cooldown even a little bit, just because the fact that this is a 2-second cooldown is almost negligible. Where to begin? It has an absurd list of tech, easily one of the most versatile weapons in the game, just next to the Freezeframe rocket launcher in similarity and synergy. Hammer boost for 7 damage, which is a 2 damage hit scan and a 5 damage explosion for AoE. Double hammer boost / death stars for 14 damage for 10 damage explosions and 2 damage hit scans. And you can stack that up in the beginning of a wave. 2 extra rockets, that's what? 9, 9, 9, 27, 34 damage in the beginning of a wave. You can easily use that on an Insurrectionist or on a Mind Flayer, or you can use it on multiple Virtues if you're skilled enough. You also have rocket to core nukes, you have flicker nukes. You can make so much use. You can make so much use with your ridden rockets after having ridden them instead of just dismounting them and wasting them. This weapon makes every rocket into 7 free damage that you can use immediately following it. You also have some of your situational stuff, which can give you incredible damage for just the cost of a 1 hit. Core jams by hitting an enemy in the core at the same time, hit stop nukes for core security if you don't want it blasting your way or being interrupted by a Maurice or something, all wrapped up under one weapon. One weapon that could do almost all of it. Easily probably the best weapon standalone and with synergies in the game. And just above it, I mean, who saw it coming? You know, here come the fists. The Whiplash is the best movement tool in the game, more immediate and less costly than the Freezeframe rocket launcher, inducing less risk and more fine-tuning, providing more options, all without the need of a weapon to enable it. It enables FUPs, it supports the Jackhammer in millions of ways, such as providing easy red gauges and adding nuance to your approach for yellow gauges. It also supports some of your shotguns as well, that need to get up close in order to get their best value with melee P-boost or with an overpump. You can also whip slam to instantly transmit slam damage for kill confirms, as well as set up double slams. The one drawback is the hard damage gain up to 50%, but you can easily mitigate it with ULTRAKILL style. And you can also mitigate this by just whip hopping, or whip jumping, which is just jumping during your whiplash pull so that you are still launching towards your target at a slightly slower speed, but you're not gaining any hard damage while you do it. Easily the best movement tool in the game, right up next to the Freezeframe rocket launcher. Finally, in the Irreplaceable tier, the oh so irreplaceable Feedbacker. The best support, damage, and defensive weapon in the game. Inexpensive, instant, provides immense damage against most matchups, and heals you to full with every parry. Nothing, I don't really need to justify this placement to you guys. I think everyone would easily agree that this belongs here. Now, there is one weapon that is missing from this list, and I'll give you a little bit of time to sort of figure out which weapon that might be, and that's because it belongs in the biased tier for me. This tier is just here for my personal favorite weapon that I still believe belongs in Irreplaceable, but it just stands above them all as my favorite one. It is none other than the Pump Charge Jackhammer. Oh boy, Like I said, this is my favoriteest weapon ever. I love the freedom it offers with kill confirms and the range with which its damage can extend. Hit stop pumps are immaculate. It allows for faster overpumps than the pump charge shotgun, which is incredible. So you get the best of both worlds by having a large 7 damage explosion for crowd control, and also get to deal a lot of single target damage if you want to deal with that pesky Mind Flare or Virtue or Insurrectionist, a lot of enemies that are going to be forcing one-on-ones with you instead of clumping up together like Swords Machines and Cerberus. You can also use it against Guttermen if you want to just get their on-death explosion really soon. And not only that, alone, it adds meaningful damage during the first pump for upwards of 9.5 damage minimum, which is just 0.5 damage shy of an overpump on the pump charge shotgun. And the cherry on top, it also serves as a reminder for my first entries into the ULTRAKILL community, being jack shots and double slams. Things I've shared with the community that people have enjoyed. And I'm happy to have shown those things. And I couldn't have done it without this weapon. So yeah, that's my tier list. I think it looks a lot better compared to my previous tier list. If you guys have opinions, I am so excited to see them. Please let me know in the comments section what you think about some of my placements. I think a lot of people can unanimously agree with this. Please, for the love of God, try to convince me of how the Core Eject shotgun is somehow not this low on the tier list. I don't know. Maybe there's something I don't know. Tell me. I'm gonna be reading. You guys know I love the comment section. So, yeah, I'll see you guys there.